Mike Harris back with What in the Law podcast. And today I'm going to talk a little more about DUIs, or whatever different series of letters they may use in your state. DUIs are one of the most common cases we see in court, and a lot of people have some different misconceptions about them. But there's a lot involved. It's more than what is your record and what is your test result. Probably the first thing that needs to be looked at in any DUI case is how you were even contacted by the police in the first place. Were you pulled over? Did something else happen? And was that lawful? Once you get through that, you have to look at the investigation. Were there roadside sobriety tests? Were they done properly? Or did they do the standard tests or something different? And are you even able to do the tests? The tests themselves, even if everything is done perfectly, have a significant margin of error rate. So you have to look at those. Once you get beyond the tests, was there overall enough evidence for an arrest or a probable cause in your case? If there was, now we have to talk about the test. And are you properly advised of what is involved? In Colorado, we have something called an express consent law. In most states, they call it implied consent, which basically means if you drive, you agree to take a test. But there are certain things about those tests that you have to look at to see if it was done properly. Once you get through that, were your Miranda rights violated? In other words, your right to remain silent. This is less common a deciding factor in DUI cases, but it can be. If you are alleged to have refused to take a test, did you refuse to take a test? Was the information done properly? Or did you change your mind in enough time? In Colorado, we have a law that allows people to change their mind and take a test as long as they do so in a timely manner, where a lot of other states have a completely different rule where once you refuse, too bad. If you do take a test, what test? Breath test, blood test, urine test? Was it working? Are you able to get some other testing to look at that sample and see if that was done right? Beyond that, there's usually going to be a video. Most places in this country now have videos of DUI cases, either a body camera or a car video. Looking at that is obviously very important in analyzing what the case is. Now, even if you go through everything and there's just no defense, there's still other things to look at. Now, keep in mind, what I just gave you is not even a complete list of the possible issues, especially if you're dealing with some sort of medication. But even if everything shows you're guilty and there's no proper defense, you still have other things to look at regarding what type of punishment. What led up to the case? Was there something in your life, some sort of episode or mental health issue or something else going on? What was happening during the offense? That could matter as far as what was happening in your life. And what often is sometimes the most important thing is what have you done since the offense to try and fix things and try to improve whatever problems you may have. All of these things matter, and there's a lot more than just plugging people into boxes. There might be mandatory jail depending on what you're looking at. In Colorado, if you have a .20 alcohol level, even on a first offense, you are looking at some mandatory time. If you have prior offenses, you're looking at mandatory time. And is that time going to be, no kidding, jail, work release, some sort of house arrest or home detention? These things can differ. And are you looking at something where you're going to have a permanent conviction on your record? Or is it something you can keep a DUI off, or get a lesser offense, or get a deferred sentence where you have no record? All of these things are important issues. And just assuming it's going to be simple, walking in, signing whatever they give you and walking out is not necessarily the best thing. When you are looking at hiring a lawyer, there's a few things you should ask. One is make sure you get a copy of all the reports and videos, or what we call discovery. Make sure that the lawyer you have is going to not only look over the written reports, but is going to personally check over all those videos. That can matter, no matter what your alcohol test might be or anything else. Watching the videos always matters, no matter how tedious and boring. Also, make sure your lawyer is going to go through everything carefully as far as what your options are, what the risks are involved. And frankly, talk to 3 lawyers before you hire someone, and make sure that whoever you have not only has the intelligence, but the willingness and passion to do whatever may need to be done for your certain circumstance. That doesn't mean everyone's going to trial. Frankly, most people, probably well over 90%, are going to take some sort of deal, and usually should take a deal. But every case is different. And that's why it's so important to not make assumptions, have someone who's going to go through everything and be a straight shooter with you about the good and the bad of what you may be looking at. So that's a little bit about DUIs. Keep in mind, each of those things I just talked about could be broken up into a whole episode in and of itself, often several episodes. Each of these things can be difficult. So at the same time, help is available. There are people like me who specialize in these things and study these things. So it's not always as bad as it may seem, but don't make assumptions. And if you are dealing with something like this, make sure you get the right help. So see you next time on What in the Law podcast.